M3GAN? What are you doing? Oh, shit!
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys. And welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at M3GAN, or better known as M3GAN. A robotics engineer at a toy company builds a lifelike doll that begins to take life on a life of its own. Yeah, I know, I had to say it. Come on. The trend of doing movies with numbers is something I just really don't like. Looking at you, Fan4Stick, you've been on the top of my list for quite a long time by doing that. I think Expendables is doing that. Expendables. God, come on, guys. This is a trend in Hollywood we don't need. But putting that all aside, M3GAN's an interesting movie. Our friends at Blumhouse have come back to the channel. James Wan is actually a producer on this movie, which a lot of you know. James Wan's one of my favorite horror directors and writers working today. And, M3GAN, it could have went either way, I think, for me at some point. Where I first saw the movie, I'm like, are we just making Child's Play again? Is this what we're doing? It's just a modernized Child's Play, which we kind of just got recently, if anyone can remember. Just a few years ago, I think the remake for Child's Play came out, and it was pretty terrible from what I saw of it. So M3GAN, I thought, was a similar fate, but yet again, I'm pleasantly surprised. I actually had a really, really good time with this movie. M3GAN is a lot smarter than I thought it was going to be. Of course, it's hokey, horror, fun at the end of the day, but the commentary I think it had, and some of the practical effects, and some of just the genuine shock moments I think it put on screen, kind of shows why, James Wan's still one of the best voices in horror today, whether he's behind the camera or just behind the script in general. I think M3GAN was a really good time. Adam, how about you? What'd you think of this one?
I gotta be honest, I didn't hate this film as much as I thought I was going to.
Okay,
it was surprisingly enjoyable. I don't know if it was just because of like the hilarity of it, or
part of it, yeah,
probably to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, like you said, like some of the writing was actually really good.
Yeah, it definitely captures, and I think James Wan does this like a really good job with this in a lot of his movies. Most recently, I can think of *Malignant* was one of his most recent horror movies where I found myself. This is an incredibly stupid premise with, someone, spoilers for *Malignant* if you haven't seen it, there's someone, a twin born and attached to the back of your head, controlling your thoughts, making you do bad things. And while M3GAN's maybe not that, it's an AI doll that comes to life and, wants to be with your child and kill you off and all that, again, incredibly stupid premise, but there's actually some heart really attached to the story. And I think that's really what shines through here and maybe makes M3GAN slightly more endearing than, I don't even know if James Wan intentionally wanted it to. Julie, how about you? What did you think of this one?
Again, had minimal expectations for this movie. I thought it was going to be hokey, but had an enjoyable time. And I thought it was very clever, funny, and scary, not in like the horror way, but like scary in the fact that like, this could be our future if we don't play our cards right. I felt like it had a good commentary on AI and tech.
Yeah, I think so. And that's maybe one of its appeals too, because we are kind of emerging right currently now in our society where we do have this like over reliance on AI technology and letting someone else do the parenting, not even being a parent myself, but just from the perspective of whatnot, seeing how people are, I could definitely see how this movie kind of fits into that social commentary. And some of the best horror movies, I think, are social commentary to some extent. That's what makes them more relatable, and maybe even their horror aspects a little bit more scary, even if they are utterly ridiculous. On top of that, though, I think one of the best parts of this movie are actually the young girl, Katie, played by Violet McGraw. She's a really good young actress. And I think if she wasn't as endearing as she was, especially her connection with M3GAN, I don't think this movie really would have worked for me in any capacity, because I would say the rest of the actors are serviceable for the most part. Gemma Allison Williams, she's fine. I really didn't really care for her being up. She's, my sister died and I have to go through this and have to take care of her daughter now. it really wasn't her story that I was interested in. It was really Katie's story with M3GAN and her connection and losing her parents and finding a true friend in M3GAN, who is super creepy but also super endearing at the same time as a character. I found myself quite conflicted with how I felt about her. How about you, Adam? What were some of the things you think worked as far as the story in this movie?
Honestly, Katie was a really good actress. Like,
Yeah.
there were points where I think I just got, like, when she was on screen, I just got so sucked into, focusing on what they were doing between her and the interactions with M3GAN. It was just like, I don't know. It was it was a very good, like, scene every single time that they were on the screen.
Yeah, the hurt, I think, is really what
Yeah.
comes through a lot in this movie for me, especially when she talks about losing her parents and, she's talking with M3GAN the first time they have their like demonstration in the room where M3GAN has to show how she can comfort her, and she's like yelling and she's like upset at the same time. That's really hard for a child. Actually, I'll say a seasoned actress, let alone a child actress, to get across quite compellingly and engage in the story. And she has to do this with a doll that just stares at her blank face, and there's a lot of credit for there to be said for that. Julie, how about you? What did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought she was great. Well, and then even still, it might not have always been a blank face staring back at her. The fact that they actually had another child actor playing the role of M3GAN for a lot of the movie, so to see that there was an actual back and forth between Violet McGraw as Katie and another actress, I think Amy Donald played M3GAN primarily. And that even just goes into a whole other thing with like the practical effects and the stuff that they were able to do to make it look like a robot was there. But I was very impressed with her performance. I think the two of them stole the show. I mean, as rightfully so.
Yeah, and that's another point that I'm glad you point out, because God damn it, I'll say it again and again. Practical effects, ladies and gentlemen. That's what works, and that's what sells this movie 100% of the time. M3GAN is, for the most part, there the entirety of the movie, whether it's some kind of stand-in prosthetic or a girl, Amy Donald, in an actual like suit playing M3GAN. It's so much more effective, and it's so much more disturbing and unsettling, because again, it's interesting as we start talking about this movie, you're probably like, what's so disturbing or bad about this movie? Like, everything we've talked about right now, we're praising the acting and the emotions, but it's the unsettling nature of obsession, right, that we see within the AI, and just it taking over, and kind of that almost Terminator meets Child's Play kind of mentality here, Rise of the Machines mentality taking over. It really sells you, especially M3GAN becomes this, I would say at the beginning, like a kind of like just like almost like a puppet, just like a blank canvas of a character, but we slowly see her turn into her own kind of character who's manipulative and twisted towards the end of this movie. And it's slow but steady, but when it turns, it turns, and it changes the whole tone of this movie completely. And it's really unsettling. I really think it is. And again, maybe it is played for laughs a little bit. I think that's one of James Wan's strengths with his horror movies. Especially when he's writing, he knows how to turn the characters to make a funny situation tense at the same time. And I think it's all there in this movie. I just think it's a lot of fun. Adam, did you have any like sequences that you really liked in this movie? Was there anything that surprised you as far as what we were given? Because it gets pretty violent towards the end of this movie.
Yeah, actually, it does get very violent. But I
Yeah.
mean, the one that sticks out to me is when they're hanging out in the woods.
Oh God, yeah.
I think it's just between the way that M3GAN moves,
Yeah.
and then
The
what
spider crawl.
Good old
Yeah.
spider crawl.
and what she does to the other young boy in the woods there. That's like, burned into my brain at this point.
Yeah, I think it really is just unsettling, especially child on child violence. It always is unsettling to some extent for me. Especially I think we've seen a lot more of it in movies. It used to be very much a taboo kind of thing in film where we wouldn't see it in horror movies. Recently, I know with like Evil Dead, we've seen something I didn't think we would see quite in some time. The remake of It was another one, for example, where we saw a young child get injured. And when you see that, it's not even just shock value anymore. I think it's just disturbing, and it really works, especially again the visual of M3GAN being so unsettling, spider crawling through the woods, chasing after this boy, and you just hear the soundtrack picks up and it starts to get going. It really works. And I think maybe you can make the argument that this movie never goes full horror mode to any extent. It never becomes like a Child's Play like movie, where I think I was waiting for that to be more of kind of like the central, like, oh, the doll's killing people and getting away with it and not knowing that. But it never really becomes that. And maybe that's also what saves it, I think, at the same time. Because if it was just another Child's Play almost remake or spiritual successor, if you would, I don't think this movie would have been as interesting. Do you agree with that, Julie? Because I think that the road that they decided to take by keeping it this doll that's just obsessive with this girl, I think was a lot better of a take than maybe even Child's Play in general. That's gonna get me some heat.
Yeah, well, yeah, that gave Megan more of like a stake in the events of the movie, where like, I guess if we're comparing it to Child's Play, like he was just self-serving in his own respect of like just wanting to find a host, where Megan, she took her task, her job too seriously at that point, but her job was to care for Katie. And she did that. And if anyone came to threaten that, she was going to take care of it. So if you really want to think about it, everything Megan's doing is coming from a place of love, I guess, in her own twisted way. And I do like, to the extent that the character and, you know, the horror movie tropes of like characters being dumb, I feel like that didn't play out with, especially what's her name? Gemma's character. Like, I feel like she caught on pretty quickly that something was going on, because she is, you know, a robotic scientist, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like, what's happening? Or like that typical, like, oh, Katie, did you kill the neighbor's dog kind of thing? Like, I feel like she was immediately like, all right, something's going on, you know, and was able to kind of, and there was deniability there, but I feel like she was able to kind of uncover the source of everything that was happening. But, you know, the effectiveness of how she handled it is another thing. But
yeah, and I think this movie does suffer from some of the cliches. Like, you're just like, really? You're going to go in that direction? Especially towards the end of the movie, it kind of just sets itself up in like a certain direction where certain characters are just happening to run into Megan and happening to be knocked off. And it seems a little crazy at the end, which, again, that's also a complaint I have with some James Wan films, where he starts off like kind of slow and methodic, I think, with his storytelling. And then he's like, oh shit, I forgot to put the action in. Okay, flip the switch. Let's go. And that's kind of what this movie does, I think, towards the end of the movie. And if it's satisfying, though. I think I had a really good time with that. I do like, you know, just a lot of the ideas I think just really work, especially for maybe what's not a true full-fledged horror movie, but more of maybe a thriller horror. Maybe it's a little more leans heavier on the thriller aspects and like the dangers of, having an assistant parent, if you will, and the dangers of over-reliance on AI. I think the commentary was a lot stronger than the horror elements of this movie. And I don't know, maybe different marketing would have sold this a little bit differently. I know a lot of people do enjoy this movie. Ironic, I don't know, Megan became a gay icon throughout the release of this movie, which I think is quite hilarious. Hey, good for that. I'm glad there was an icon to be found in this movie. Not sure how healthy of an icon, but hey, it's an icon nonetheless that was found. So that's really interesting. I got to give it to them. But, Megan, I think it's a good time. If you're looking for something a little bit different, again, Blumhouse is one of those studios that for every 2 movies or 3 movies that they put out, you'll get one good one eventually. It just kind of tends to be, the way they work with their films. But I think we're at that point. We're going to give our final scores on this. I'm going to give Megan a 7.5 out of 10.
This is the part where you run.
This is a fine movie. I had a really good time with this. I think it does a lot of really good things with its practical effects. It's a young child actress in Violet McGraw is really fascinating. I love the commentary. This was definitely something I didn't expect. There's some weaknesses for sure. I think it's a little too slow at times for me. Some of the pacing could have, been kept up. And again, there is like a point where I think a switch is flipped and this movie just turns into something completely different and it's kind of off the rails towards the end there. But if you put all that aside and just watch it for what it is, I think it's a good time. I think it has a decent message that should be listened to, maybe with caution, if you will. And it's also a fun horror movie that's not Child's Play. So if you're thinking that, I wouldn't blame you. That's kind of how the marketing sold this movie. It's not that. It actually is something a little bit more deeper. And I think you guys should check it out. Adam, how about you? What do you think on this one?
I'm going to give Megan a 7.7. I think the main reason why I'm giving it that score is because of the first half of the film is completely different than the second half of the film, I feel. If it stayed on pace with more of the first half of the film, like maybe amped that up a little bit more instead of going more the action film route towards the end there, I think it would have been a stronger ending. But I mean, overall, it was pretty decent.
Yeah,
I thought it was good.
By the end of this movie, again, I'll reiterate, it was like a Terminator sequel by the end of this movie. I felt like, I was like, we got Sarah Connor being born in front of our eyes here, fighting the rise of the machines. But it's you know what, it is a James Wan trope, I think, at this point we've come to expect with some of his films, where they just, I don't know, man, there's something that just flips on them, and there's something else. So whether or not you enjoy that, I think it'll depend on the viewer. But admirable score, my friend. I can appreciate it. Julie, how about you? What do you think?
I'm going to be giving M3GAN a 7.8 out of 10.
Hey! Do we have some new adventurers with us today?
Yes, this is Katie.
And who's this? Your sister? Oh, Jesus Christ.
I really liked the social commentary he was making about, you know, our use of AI. I thought the child actors were really strong. The horror, you know, had enough of a creep factor, but also some, you know, comedy in it to keep, and very quick pace too. It, like, nothing was like, oh, this is dragging on too much. I do like your point where, like, the second half of the movie is very different from the first. And there's definitely some hokiness in there. Some of the performances were not great. But that's kind of to be expected in these kinds of movies. Did this get a sequel? I think it's getting one, right?
I believe there was something announced that there's something.
I'm curious to see where we go from here, you know. So,
well, it might turn into Child's Play, you know, just yet. It might still be a thing that could happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see where we go with M3GAN.
Yeah, I think there's potential. You know, I don't know if I necessarily would have wanted a sequel. I think a one and done with this was quite enough. But, you know, I mean, James Wan's known for that too. If you want to draw any other inspirations from his work, Annabelle is another one that looked no further. He spun off into like 1 million films with his name attached to it. You know, he's the machine at Blumhouse. He pumps stuff out, you know. He starts off a good one. He's like, here you go, guys. I got a great idea. And then they just spin it off to hell until it's unrecognizable, which... yeah, it's part of the Hollywood machine. But again, I will remember this movie for being something a little bit different, a little bit more exciting. Again, coming in at 1 hour and 40 minutes too, I don't think hurts for a movie that didn't overstay its welcome, even though it did feel just a little bit too long. And I think a lot of that just really had to do with pacing. But again, I do recommend you guys check this out. It's not going to be the horror movie you're expecting, but I think it's going to be the thriller kind of pseudo action Terminator movie you're looking for. I don't know. You're going to have a good time. I think you guys should check it out. But thank you all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That's Adam and Julie. We are your real movie guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you next time.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.